Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mike Kollin at MikeKollin.com. Okay, so this video is going to be, I'm going to focus on this one very specific thing that I really think will change your life. It's probably the most powerful tool I could give to you. And something just came up, so I have a gut feeling that this is going to help someone change something that they've been suffering from for a long time. So this is going to be kind of a sad video. It's not really meant to be sad. It's definitely not meant to, a lot of people, oh, I'm so sorry to hear that. It's not why I'm sharing this. I'm sharing this because there's something that I learned that I finally applied, because I learned it in expensive NLP trainings, Tony Robbins trainings, and it wasn't until one day, about more than a decade later after I learned it, that I finally applied it, and lo and behold, it worked. So for those of you who have followed my channel for the last 2.5-3 years, you're very aware I grew up in an extremely abusive, violent environment, and I was physically tortured and abused as a child growing up. And that is not what this video is about. So when I was in high school, I had 18 friends die from 9th grade to 12th grade, including my girlfriend's brother, best friends, people who sat next to me, people I grew up with. And it was a really tough time. And then a year and a half after high school, my best friend died with 3 other friends. Now when Marlon died, I collapsed. I completely melted down. I was completely lost. And I don't mean for 6 months or a year, but I mean for about 14 years. And I left Napa. I ran away. And to this day, I've gone back a few times, but it's still just, it's very hard. So the reason why I'm sharing this with you is because I have a feeling a few of you or more of you out there are suffering from something like this. So let me give you a little bit more, and then I'm going to give you something that helped me. So it was pretty hard. I'll give you an example. So the fact that all those people died was hard enough. The fact that my best friend died was just, it was unbearable. It was literally unbearable for 14 years at least. So about 3 days afterwards, his parents had invited close friends and family to come over for dinner and to talk and and just to be together. And my girlfriend, she was going to USC at the time. She had called up at his house. I thought it was really surprising because she had never once called there. I think she went there one time in her life. In fact, to be honest with you, I don't think she ever went there. She never met my best friend's parents or family. And so she had called me up. Here I was. We're all there, after he died. I think it was the day before the funeral. Or maybe it was a couple days before. And everyone was crying and sad and talking. And she called up, and a mom answered. And she says, "Mike, it's for you." And I thought that was really odd because, nobody called me there, for me at his house. And, I helped her through her brother's death for about 4+ years. It wasn't easy at all. And she made life as hard as possible. That's another story, but let me just get right to it. So Marlon's mom answers the phone, and that's the mother whose son died. And she goes, "Oh, it's for you." I'm like, "For me?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's your girlfriend, Megan." I was like, "Oh, okay." And so I take the phone, and Mrs. Pilling, Marlon's mom, leaned her head on my shoulder and was listening in on the conversation, expecting something kind, supportive, loving, etc., which I did too. And instead, she said, "Yeah, I'm calling to break up with you." And I said, "Oh, I guess you didn't hear, what happened here in Napa." She says, "No, no, I heard, Monica, or it was either Monica or Peggy just called me and told me your best friend Marlon just died, and that's why I'm calling to break up with you." So Marlon's mom heard this, and she literally ran down the hallway and up the stairs crying out loud, just wailing. And I think it was just the cruelty that people can have towards one another under such unbelievable times. Like, why would you do something like that? And so my family was brutal to me. My mom convinced me to move back home about a year later, maybe 2 years later. And when I moved in, it was a nightmare. They just went after me. And I remember when I was 28 years old, I had my own place, and I invited my mom over. I said, I've got to ask you a question. And because they were brutal to me. I mean, it was the stuff that they did was unbelievable. And I said to her, I said, I thought when I moved back home, you guys were going to be there and finally love me and finally support me. And, I thought you wanted me to move in so you could help me, work through this and get through it, etc., and be there for me. And I said, instead, maybe it's all in my mind, but it's like you guys went in for the kill, like you went in for the attack, like you're, trying to finish me off. And she started laughing hysterically. And she goes, "You're just figuring this out now?" Because they didn't try to hide it. They didn't, being an empath, you just want to see the best in people. And that's one thing you've got to stop doing. You've got to see people for who they are, the good and the bad. You can't just, only see one little sliver of goodness and 99% is bad and you block it out. You need to see people to protect yourself. So I start crying hysterically. I'm like, I don't understand. Was I a bad kid and I don't remember? And because I said something like, as I look back, I thought I was really nice to you, and Mom, I loved you, and I loved my brothers and sisters, and blah blah blah. And she's laughing. She goes, "Michael, you were the nicest kid in the world. You never did anything wrong to anyone. You were nice to everyone. You never got in trouble with the cops. You never got suspended." I'm forgetting what else she said, and I'm thinking like, so why were you mean to me? And she literally said, and then she turned angry. And she said, "You would literally give the shirt off your back to a total stranger if they needed it." And I'm like, now I think that's a good thing. And I'm like, but the way she said it was like it angered her. And I'm like, well, why not? So she said, "You got good grades, you did this." She goes, "You were in the newspaper every week for sports." She goes, "We couldn't stand it. We hated it." So I'm giving you the shortened version of this because this is not what this video is about. It's something that happened after. So essentially she's mad at me because she goes, "You were good at everything you did. You couldn't just play football. You had to be the captain. You couldn't just be the captain. You guys had to be section champions. No matter what you did, you always went to the top." And I'm looking at her like, well, that's a good thing, right? And she's like, "No." She goes, "I hated it." And then she goes, "On top of it, you were nice." Like this was a bad thing. So I was crying, and I think I literally fell to my knees, and I literally just said, "No mercy," like question, and she said no. And then for the first time in my life, I got up and I stood up and I yelled at her and I told her to get the F out of here. Don't ever come back. I mean, I was just like, I didn't know what to think. It was horrible. So at this point, it had been almost 10 years. So I was about 28 or just after. And it had been 10 years or so. And I had just lived I cried every night, every day, waking up, cried in the shower. It was horrible. I was depressed. I was sad. And it wasn't just that he died, but it was everything that had happened that they had did. It was just this horrible thing. Like any opportunity they had. Oh yeah, here's what she said. She said, "Your whole life when you were a kid, we would beat you and hit you and hurt you and do everything we could to beat you down." And she said, "But you never you never quit. You just kept working harder and achieved more goals, and you got better at everything you did. And then she said that this was the first opportunity we had to get you while you were down. And so, yeah, they did go in for the kill. So I went and won a national championship in kickboxing. Seriously. My whole life until that moment, I did not know that they didn't like me because I was good at stuff. I was good at sports. I was good at school. That I was a good person. Like that part really, like that didn't make any sense. So I'm like, wait, you're mad at me because I was good to you? Like that's probably the weirdest thing that empaths learn about narcissists is they hate us because we're good, because we're nice to them, because we're good people. It's just like your mind's like, wow, like you like literally I couldn't comprehend that. I could not comprehend that. So the next morning, or technically it was about 11 or almost noon, I went to my sister's house and said, hey, I gotta ask you something. I had this weird conversation with Mom last night. And she goes, oh yeah, and she starts laughing. Mom came over and we had a real big laugh about it. I'm like, well, no, I don't think she told you. She's, no, she did. And I was like, no, we were talking about ball. She goes, yeah, she came over here and said this and that to you, and we laughed. And I'm thinking, what the fuck? And then that was the time I said, but I thought I was always good to you. I was always there for you. I always helped you when you and your husband moved, and helped you move your furniture. Like, I don't understand, like, why, like, what? And she said, Michael, you're here for us. We're not here for you. And she goes, in this lifetime, you're a slave. The sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be in life. So yes, narcissists are slave masters, and they will look at you like you're literally a slave. So I just turned around and walked out, and I've never helped her to this day. Never since. So here's the message in all of this. I wanted to get you to understand some of the pain that I've been through and like how horrendous it was. So when my best friend died, I had just cried nonstop, and this definitely didn't help, and it just made things worse. And I had probably cried for about another 3 or 4 or 5 years. I'm thinking like 4 or 5, 6, probably 6 or 7 years till I was 34, 35 years old. And here's what changed it. So when I was around 20 years old, I started going to Tony Robbins seminars, 21, etc. And he taught us something. And it's something we learned in NLP also. It was taught in a different way, but it was the same teaching. And once again, I just thought, yeah, there's just no way that's going to help me. It's not going to. It's like I'm sorry. I didn't believe that it would work. So here I was in my mid-30s, and I was struggling. I was not happy. I was crying a lot. And this technique just kind of popped into my head one day, and I thought, why not? Why not try it? Why not? Because when it was taught to me, I just couldn't imagine. So here's what it is. So everything that you do in life, everything that you experience in life, you give a meaning to it. Everything, every single thing. Now, listen closely. You're the one who connected neurologically a meaning to that event. This is why some people can be disliked, people could be talking crap about them or humiliating them, but their mother said, oh, that's just because they're jealous, because they know that you're better than them, or something like that. And for some reason that really sunk in, and they really believe that. So when people start being mean to them and hurting them, it literally is pushing that button that has that nerve that connects to that message of they're jealous of you, which means you're better than them and they're beneath you, and they know it, and that's why they're doing it. Now, for me, that never really worked, okay? And I just, whatever, but I just thought, who can do it? But I've seen people that get energized, they get empowered when people are being mean to them. And it just, and it literally, like, they glow, they smile, and they get energized from it. And I'm thinking, like, how could they, like, do that? Like, that's always perplexed me. So another thing we learned in NLP, and then I'm going to get to a story that'll help you understand this technique better. And I've given the story far in the past, 6 months, a year ago, but I think it's important to give it now again. So another thing we learned in NLP, so we have all these techniques and all these different ways of reframing and doing this and doing that, and everything comes down to one thing, including what we call anchors. And when they said this, I thought, well, that doesn't apply to anchors. And like, yeah, an anchor is exactly this. And that word is reframe. So when people used to be mean to me, I used to feel bad. But what I did is I reconnected that to, hey, this is what this means over here. It means they're jealous of you. It means that you're a threat to them. Now, people have said this to you. Hell, my goddaughter, when she was in, I think it was 11th grade, someone on campus, two people actually were really like, they tried to set me up. And there were adults that worked there, and they tried to set me up. They were just, mean, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell? Like, what the hell's... And I caught them in their bullshit, and I called them on it, and they were like, oh, shit. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go to the head of this school, and I'm going to tell them what happened. And my goddaughter was a witness to it. So I walked away thinking, what the hell? And my goddaughter was just grinning from ear to ear, and I'm looking at her like, what are you so happy for? She goes, you're a threat to them. And I'm like, what the... Like, what does that mean? I didn't understand it. And so I went to my energy healer, and we talked about this, and she goes, oh, Michael, you're a threat to them. And she had said this to me a few times in the past. I'm like, about other situations like this. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, how am I don't want their job. I'm not trying to get... She goes, yeah, but Michael, in their mind, they see you as this, this, and this is why they're... I'm like, oh, okay. And it still didn't connect. But once it did connect, everything changed. So let me get to the story, because during the trainings, Tony Robbins trainings, NLP trainings, this was a really hard thing to accept because we really didn't understand it. And once you understand it, then you're like, oh, I see what you're saying. See, you can take charge of every emotion that you have. You can reframe and reconnect and re-anchor anything to anything. In fact, this is probably, if not the number one thing I do, like reframing and shifting perspective. Those are two of the most prominent things that I do with people. It's like, I'm going to anchor this and reconnect this. So this button, say the button K, used to connect to pain. Now I'm going to connect it to empowerment, to confidence, to happiness, to fun, to being energized, whatever. You can neurologically do that with your system. So here it is. So I'm at a Tony Robbins seminar, and I know I shared this with you before, but it's been a while. He was talking about how it's the meaning that you give to it. That is what affects your life. And I was like, oh, come on. And so he goes, no. He goes, let me give you guys a story. And so it's a true life story. There was 3 soldiers. 2 of them were in the foxhole. And the other guy was outside of the foxhole doing something. And one of the things they told him is, like, even though your feet are freezing and numb, and I don't remember if this was probably the Korean War, but yeah, I think it was the Korean War. I think I said Vietnam War in the last one. But they said, even though your feet get freezing cold and they feel numb, because the first thing they want to do is take off their boots, and they want to rub their feet and get the blood circulation going so they don't get frostbite, and so they can, so they don't hurt. And so they would tell him, don't frickin' do that, because if you get caught in combat without your boots on, you are screwed. So sure enough, one of the guys was out in front of the foxhole, I don't know, 5 feet or 10 feet or whatever, out in front. And he was doing this. He had his boots off, and he's, rubbing one of his feet. And sure enough, the enemy came, and they blew him up. And the 2 guys in the foxholes watched their battle buddy literally get blown up right in front of their faces, and they both saw it from the same exact perspective, from the same exact distance, side by side. So I don't know if it was 10 years later or 15 years later, but years later, many years later, there was a reporter or someone who's writing an article or a story or a book or something, and he followed up on the one guy. and he found. I'm trying to remember. Yeah, I think that it was the guy's life went bad. So I'll just do it that way. I don't remember if this is how the story's told, but it's this one first or the other one. Doesn't matter. So they found the one guy, and they found him, and he was homeless. He was homeless. He was hooked on drugs. He looked horrible. He had aged horribly. He was not healthy at all because he was doing heavy drugs. And he was homeless, etc. And the reporter asked him. They said, "Well, so what happened? Like, what led you down this path?" And he said, "When I was in the war, I watched my buddy get blown up by I think it was a hand grenade, right?" He goes, "I literally watched him get blown up right in front of my face. And I realized," or he said, "I decided from that point forward, life wasn't worth living." And that's the meaning he associated to that event. So from that point forward, his life went downhill and nothing was meaningful. Nothing was worthwhile. He literally said life wasn't worth living. So then they go and follow they did research, and they did investigations to find the other guy. And so they found the other guy. He went to college. I think he got his master's or doctorate degree in law. And then he went and worked for a law firm for a while. And then he started his own law firm and became a multimillionaire, very successful lawyer. And then he became a senator. Yes, a real life United States senator. And so the guy, when he was interviewing him, said, like, "Well, so what happened? Like, how so you went to the war, and now you're this successful, person. Like, everything you did was successful, and like you're happy. You've got a beautiful wife, beautiful kids, beautiful 2-story home, beautiful children." And he's like, "Oh," and so the reporter was like, "What led you down? Like, how come your life turned out like this?" He goes, "Oh, I'll tell you exactly what it was." And it turns out he was also the other guy in the foxhole. And he said, "When I saw my buddy get blown up right in front of my face, I decided right then and there, life is precious. Every moment is precious, and you have to live life to the fullest because you never know when it's your last day." So he went off, and every moment of every day got the most out of it. He lived his life to the fullest. He worked hard. He studied. He absorbed life. He did the best he could. And he created this amazing, amazing life that very, very few people will ever live. And the reason is because of that horrible experience in the war. That's why his life became that way. And yet the other guy said and did the complete opposite. The reason why his life literally went down into the gutters, literally, was because of that exact same moment, standing right next to the guy from the same perspective, the same distance, literally in the same foxhole, facing the same direction, and experiencing the same experience. See, it's not the experience that happened to you. It's the meaning that you associated to it. Now, when I first heard this story, and I read it in his book, I heard it as Tony Robbins' home study program, and I saw him teach the same story in 2 different seminars, and I had this conflict inside because and it's like, as I look back now, I was like, I know that story was for me. I know that's what I needed to hear, but I just couldn't believe. There's no way that this little, changing my perspective was going to help me get over my friend's death and all the bullshit that went. I think there's no way. So over the years, learning NLP and hypnosis and understanding how our brain wires one connection. It's literally like, okay, I'm looking at my keyboard. Like, if I click K, it has a wire, let's say, connected to K. So when I click the K here, the K comes up on my computer screen. And that's what I mean. Your nervous system, your actual nerves do the same thing. So one of the things we do is like, okay, so this triggers this painful experience. Like, oh, no problem. I'm going to re-anchor that meaning. It's like going into your nerve and lifting up the nerve and moving it over to this very positive experience. So now when you push this button, instead of it connected to the pain, now it's connected over here to confidence or happiness or pleasure or something good. So on a logical level, I had done this to myself with other things, and I've rewired and reframed and re-anchored and done. I've done this so many times. It's not even funny with people and myself that I know it works. I know it's real. It's not even a question in my mind. And yet here I was living with this pain. It was still in my heart. And I remember one night, I think my ex-girlfriend had hurt me really bad. I don't remember what happened, but I was alone. I was really sad, and all I could think about was my best friend who had died. God, that's 14, 15 years, at least maybe 17 years before. And I was like, I've got to do something about this. And that whole story came up about that guy in the battlefield and that foxhole and blowing up. And I thought, why not give it a shot? And in that moment, a memory came up, or like an overarching memory of Marlon himself. Now he's on the right in both these pictures, just kind of a little cocky, funny, playful, just always smiling. Always playing games, but not in a bad way, but he loved to make people laugh and smile. And he was always helping people to be happy. So I remember a day in high school, I think it was 10th grade if I remember right, the very first semester. It was kind of a cool morning. It was about 10-15 minutes before the first period bell, and we're talking out by the principal's office off to the side out front. And the bell rings, and I instantly, in the middle of the conversation, went to sprint to go to my class. He goes, whoa, Mike. I'm like, what? And he goes, where are you going? I go, I'm going to class so I don't get in trouble. Because you had the first bell, and if you weren't in your seat by the second bell, which is 5 minutes, you would get a detention. And he goes, Mike, who cares? And I go, what? And I do remember how I responded like a robot. Like we were blah, blah, blah. And then boom, like the minute the bell rang, I just ran. I didn't even say goodbye or let's catch up at noon. Like I just, and I thought, oh, that was kind of weird. Like I was programmed, which we all are. By the way, that's an anchor, the bell. So he goes, I got to ask you a question. I'm like, well, what's that? And I did realize like I've got like 4.5 minutes and no worries. And the class isn't that far away. I'm like, well, what's that? He goes, are you happy? And I remember going, what? What are you talking about? He goes, Mike, I get that you're winning all these trophies and events. You're captain of the football team and wrestling and you're winning tournaments and football games. He goes, but are you happy? And I literally looked at him and I said, well, what does that matter? And his mouth drops and he said something. He was like, really? And I felt kind of stupid for saying that, but at the time I was like, what does that matter? Because as long as I was achieving my goals, I guess in a way I was happy. Now, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he goes, something like, Michael, think about what you just said. He goes like, are you even he goes, are you even happy playing these sports? Do you even like playing these sports? And I remember just looking at him again with that look of like, well, what does it matter? Marlon's gift to life was happiness, bringing happiness and joy into people's hearts and into their lives. Marlon was this bundle of happiness and joy and fun. You know what? If there was one person on the planet that had almost zero worry, that was the guy. And he got a lot of hell for it. A lot of teachers, not a lot, but about half of them that were just unhappy, miserable, angry, they took it out on him. They gave him detentions. They would make stuff up about him. And he was just like, what? I'm just sitting here. I didn't do anything. It was very similar to my life. So essentially what it was he was this very happy person, and people that weren't happy, they went after him. So So my overall message or purpose for sharing this is that was going through my mind when I was thinking about that whole thing about, reframing and like, change the meaning, attach it to a better meaning, to a more empowering meaning, to like that event. And I just kind of almost died inside when I realized, like, here I've been living like 14 plus years just miserable, and I wasn't alive and I wasn't enjoying my life. And I thought, that's the last thing that Marlon would want me to do. Marlon's not up in heaven going, yeah, stay sad because I'm dead, Mike. Like, just really mourn my death and keep, no. Marlon would be miserable. He would be upset. And that really hit me. It's like, dude, this would be like the worst thing that Marlon would want for my life. Marlon would want me to be happy. He would want me to go and live my life to the fullest and just start having fun. And when I realized like what Marlon was all about, I felt really guilty for living sad like that. I thought, what am I thinking? Like, this is the opposite of what Marlon would want. And that changed my life. So what happened was a new meaning had arisen just out of thinking about Marlon, and when that memory came up, because it was trying to say, hey, this is what he would want. He'd want you to be happy. He'd want you to go after it again, to go after your goals and your dreams, and to do it in a way where you're enjoying life and living life to the fullest. So that is what I changed and shifted my association to, and the meaning that I gave to Marlon's death. So now Marlon's death is something that began to propel me to move forward in a much better light. So believe it or not, by simply changing the meaning that you associate to the event, that you give to the event, changes your entire life. It propels you in a better direction. So next thing you know, I was going to parties and clubs, and I started dating, and I started making money in my business, and everything turned around. Life became a blast. And one thing it did, because I used to be this perfectionist, and that's what Marlon was talking about in 10th grade. He goes, are you happy? Because I was so perfectionist about everything. And happiness was one thing that just did never fit into that. So at this point in my life, when I was 34 to 36 years old, like, I started going to clubs, I started dancing, I started just enjoying life. In other words, it wasn't about perfection. It was about experiencing life and having fun and living it. So I hope this video helps you. It may not help in this exact moment, but I have a feeling it's going to kind of mull through your brain, and you're going to start shifting some things around to where you start seeing the light and you start allowing a better, more empowering meaning drop into and shift into your life. So God bless you guys. Hope this video helped. Remember, if you like this video, click subscribe, click the like button. Go ahead and make a comment, and again, there's a donation link, a PayPal link right there in the description box. God bless you guys. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.